Section 6 of Folklore and Legends, North American Indian. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Larry Wilson. Folklore and Legends, North American Indian. The Discovery of the Upper World. The Minnetarees, and all the other Indians who are not of the stock of the grandfather of nations, were once not of this upper air, but dwelt in the bowels of the earth. The Good Spirit, when he made them, meant, no doubt, at a proper time to put them in enjoyment of all the good things which he had prepared for them upon the earth, but he ordered that their first stage of existence should be within it. They all dwelt underground like moles in one great cavern. When they emerged, it was in different places, but generally near where they now inhabit. At that time few of the Indian tribes wore the human form. Some had the figures or semblances of beasts. The Pakunaukuts were rabbits, some of the Delawares were ground hogs, others tortoises, and the Tuscaroras and a great many others were rattlesnakes. The Sioux were the hissing snakes, but the Minnetarees were always men. Their part of the great cavern was situated far towards the mountains of snow. The great cavern in which the Indians dwelt was indeed a dark and dismal region. In the country of the Minnetarees it was lighted up only by the rays of the sun which strayed through the fissures of the rock and the crevices of the roof of the cavern, while in that of the Mengwe all was dark and sunless. The life of the Indians was a life of misery compared with what they now enjoy, and it was endured only because they were ignorant of a fairer or richer world, or better or happier state of being. There were among the Minnetarees two boys, who from the hour of their birth showed superior wisdom, sagacity, and cunning. Even while they were children, they were wiser than their fathers. They asked their parents whence the light came which streamed through the fissures of the rock and played along the sides of the cavern, and whence and from what descended the roots of the great vine. Their father could not tell them, and their mother only laughed at the question, which appeared to her very foolish. They asked the priest, but he could not tell them. But he said he supposed the light came from the eyes of some great wolf. The boys asked the king tortoise, who sulkily drew his head into his shell, and made no answer. When they asked the chief rattlesnake, he answered that he knew, and would tell them all about it if they would promise to make peace with his tribe and on no account kill one of his descendants. The boys promised, and the chief rattlesnake then told them that there was a world above them, a beautiful world peopled by creatures in the shape of beasts, having a pure atmosphere and a soft sky, sweet fruits and mellow water, well-stocked hunting grounds, and well-filled lakes. He told them to ascend by the roots, which were those of a great grapevine. A while after, the boys were missing, nor did they come back till the Minnetarees had celebrated their death, and the lying priest had, as he falsely said, in a vision seen them inhabitants of the land of spirits. The Indians were surprised by the return of the boys. They came back singing and dancing, and were grown so much and looked so different from what they did when they left the cavern that their father and mother scarcely knew them. They were sleek and fat, and when they walked it was with so strong a step that the hollow space rang with the sound of their feet. They were covered with the skins of animals, and had blankets of skins of raccoons and beavers. They described to the Indians the pleasures of the upper world, and the people were delighted with their story. At length they resolved to leave their dull residence underground for the upper regions. All agreed to this except the ground hog, the badger, and the mole, who said as they had been put where they were, they would live and die there. The rabbit said he would live sometimes above and sometimes below. When the Indians had determined to leave their habitations underground, the Minnetarees began, men, women, and children, to clamber up the vine, and one half of them had already reached the surface of the earth, when a dire mishap involved the remainder in still a more desolate captivity within its bowels. There was among them a very fat old woman, who was heavier than any 6 of her nation. Nothing would do but she must go up before some of her neighbors. Away she clambered, but her weight was so great that the vine broke with it, and the opening to which it afforded the sole means of ascending closed upon her and the rest of her nation. Section 6.
Section 7 of Folklore and Legends, North American Indian. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Matthew Westra. Folklore and Legends, North American Indian. The Boy Who Snared the Sun. At the time when the animals reigned on the earth, they had killed all but a girl and her little brother, and these two were living in fear and seclusion. The boy was a perfect pygmy, never growing beyond the stature of a small infant, but the girl increased with her years, so that the labor of providing food and lodging devolved wholly on her. She went out daily to get wood for their lodge fire, and took her brother with her so that no accident might happen to him, for he was too little to leave alone, and a big bird might have flown away with him. She made him a bow and arrows, and said to him one winter day, "I will leave you behind where I've been chopping. You must hide yourself, and you will see the gitchi-gitchi-gon isiog, or snowbirds, come and pick the worms out of the wood where I've been chopping. Shoot one of them and bring it home." He obeyed her and tried his best to kill one, but came home unsuccessful. She told him he must not despair, but try again the next day. She accordingly left him at the place where she got wood and returned home. Towards nightfall she heard his footsteps on the snow, and he came in exultingly and threw down one of the birds he had killed. "My sister," said he, "I wish you to skin it and stretch the skin, and when I have killed more I will have a coat made out of them." "What shall we do with the body?" asked she, for as yet men had not begun to eat animal food, but lived on vegetables alone. "Cut it in two," he answered, "and season our pottage with one half of it at a time." She did so. The boy continued his efforts, and succeeded in killing 10 birds, out of the skins of which his sister made him a little coat. "Sister," said he one day, "are we all alone in the world? Is there nobody else living?" His sister told him that they two alone remained, that the beings who had killed all their relations lived in a certain quarter, and that he must by no means go in that direction. This only served to inflame his curiosity and raise his ambition, and he soon after took his bow and arrows and went to seek the beings of whom his sister had told him. After walking a long time and meeting nothing, he became tired and lay down on a knoll where the sun had melted the snow. He fell fast asleep, and while sleeping the sun beat so hot upon him that it singed and drew up his bird-skin coat, so that when he awoke and stretched himself, he felt, as it were, bound in it. He looked down and saw the damage done, and then he flew into a passion, upbraided the sun, and vowed vengeance against it. "Do not think you are too high," said he. "I shall revenge myself." On coming home, he related his disaster to his sister, and lamented bitterly the spoiling of his coat. He would not eat. He lay down as one that fasts, and did not stir or move his position for 10 days, though his sister did all she could to arouse him. At the end of 10 days, he turned over, and then lay 10 days on the other side. Then he got up and told his sister to make him a snare, for he meant to catch the sun. At first she said she had nothing, but finally she remembered a little piece of dried deer's sinew that her father had left, and this she soon made into a string suitable for a noose. The moment, however, she showed it to her brother, he told her it would not do, and bade her get something else. She said she had nothing at all. At last she thought of her hair, and pulling some of it out, made a string. Her brother again said it would not answer, and bade her pettishly, and with authority,
Section
make
8
him
of Folklore
a
and
noose.
Legends, North American
She replied
Indian.
that there was nothing
This
to
is
make
a
it of,
LibriVox
and went
recording.
out of the lodge.
All LibriVox recordings
When she
are in
was
the
all
public
alone,
domain.
she said,
For more
"Now
information
may we
or to volunteer,
begin."
please visit
Meanwhile, her brother awaited
LibriVox.org.
her. And
Read
it
by
was not
Matthew
long
Westra,
before she reappeared
Folklore
with
and
some tiny
Legends, North
cord.
American Indian.
The moment he saw
The
it,
Maid
he was
in the
delighted.
Box.
"This
There
will
once
do,"
lived a
he
woman
cried.
called
And he put the
Tornado
cord to his
Quay,
mouth and
female
began
spirit
pulling it through his
prophetess
lips.
on the
And
sand
as fast
mountains
as he
called the
drew,
Sleeping
it
Bear
changed
of Lake
to a
Michigan,
red metal
who had a
cord
daughter
inches
as beautiful
length,
as she
and
was
wound
modest
around his
and
body
discreet.
and shoulders.
Everybody
He then
spoke
prepared
of her
himself
beauty, and
set
she was
out
so
a little
handsome
after
that her mother
midnight,
feared
that
she
he
would
might
be
catch
carried
the
off.
sun before it
So,
rose.
to prevent it, she put
He
her in a
fixed his
box,
snare on
which
a
she
spot
pushed into
just
the
where
middle
he
of the
thought the
lake.
sun would
The
appear,
box was
and
tied
sure
by a
enough,
long
he
string
caught
to
it
a
so that
stake
it was
on the
held
shore,
fast in
and
the
every
cord,
morning the
and
mother
could
pulled
not
the box to
rise.
land,
The
and taking
animals
her
who
daughter
ruled
out
her
of it,
were
combed her hair,
immediately put
gave her
into a
food,
great commotion.
and then
They had
putting
no
her
light.
again in the box,
They called a council
set
to
her
debate the
afloat
matter.
on the lake, and to appoint someone
One day
to
it
go and
chanced
cut the
that a
cord.
handsome young man
Very
came to the
hazardous
spot at the moment
enterprise,
the girl
for
was
who
being
dare
attended
go
to
so
by
near
her
the
mother.
sun
as would
He
be
was
necessary.
struck with her beauty,
The
and
dormouse,
immediately went home
however,
and told his
undertook
love
the
to his
task.
uncle.
At that
who was a
time, the
great
dormouse was
chief
the
and
largest
a
animal in the
powerful
world.
magician.
When it stood up,
My nephew,
it looked like a
replied the old
mountain.
man, go
It
to
set
the
out
mother's
upon
lodge
its mission,
and sit down
and
in
when
a
it got
modest
to the place
manner,
where the sun
without
lay
saying a
snared, its
word.
back
You need
began
not
to
ask her a
smoke and
question,
burn,
or
so
whatever you
intense was
think,
the heat,
she will
and the top
understand.
of its carcass
And
was
what she
reduced
thinks
to
we can
enormous
answer,
heaps
you
of
will
ashes. It
The
succeeded,
young man
however, in
did
cutting
as
the
he was
cord
bid.
with its teeth.
He entered
and
the
freed
woman's
sun,
lodge and
but
sat
was
with his head
reduced
bent
to a
down
very
in a
small
thoughtful manner,
size,
without
and has
uttering a
remained
word.
so ever since.
He then thought,
Men
I
call
wish
it
she would give me her
Tuggy
daughter.
Guaqua.
Very soon he understood the mother's
End of
thoughts
section
in reply.
7.
Give you my daughter? Thought she. You? No, indeed, my daughter shall never marry you. The young man went away and reported the result to his uncle. Woman without good sense, exclaimed the old man. Who is she keeping her daughter for? Does she think she will marry the Mojikiwas, a term indicating the heir or successor to the first in power? Proud heart, we will try her magic skill and see whether she can withstand our power. He forthwith set himself to work, and in a short time the pride and haughtiness of the mother was made known to all the spirits on that part of the lake, and they met together and resolved to exert their power to humble her. To do this, they determined to raise a great storm on the lake. The water began to roar and toss, and the tempest became so severe that the string holding the box broke, and it floated off through the straits down Lake Huron and struck against the sandy shores at its outlet. The place where it struck was near the lodge of a decayed old magician called Ishkwan Daimeka, or the keeper of the gate of the lakes. He opened the box and let out the beautiful daughter, whom he took into his lodge and made his wife. When her mother found that her daughter had been carried off by the storm, she raised loud cries and lamented exceedingly. This she continued to do for a long time, and would not be comforted. At last the spirits began to pity her, and determined to raise another storm to bring the daughter back. This was even a greater storm than the first. The water of the lake washed away the ground and swept on to the lodge of Ishquandameka, whose wife, when she saw the flood approaching, leaped into the box, and the waves, carrying her off, landed her at the very spot where was her mother's lodge. Monedokwe was overjoyed, but when she opened the box she found her daughter indeed, but her beauty had almost all departed. However, she loved her still because she was her daughter, and now thought of the young man who had come to seek her in marriage. She sent a formal message to him, but he had heard of all that had occurred, and his love for the girl had died away. "I marry your daughter?" replied he. "Your daughter? No, indeed, I shall never marry her." The storm that brought the girl back was so strong that it tore away a large part of the shore of the lake and swept off Ishquandameka's lodge, the fragments of which, lodging in the straits, formed those beautiful islands which are scattered in the St. Clair and Detroit rivers. As to Ishquandameka himself, he was drowned, and his bones lie buried under the islands. As he was carried away by the waves on a fragment of his lodge, the old man was heard lamenting his fate in a song.
End of section 8. Section 9 of Folklore and Legends, North American Indian. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Matthew Westra, Folklore and Legends, North American Indian, The Spirits and the Lovers. At a distance of a woman's walk of a day from the mouth of the river, called by the palefaces the White Stone, in the country of the Sioux, in the middle of a large plain, stands a lofty hill or mound. Its wonderful roundness, together with the circumstance of its standing apart from all other hills, like a fir tree in the midst of a wide prairie, or a man whose friends and kindred have all descended to the dust, has made it known to all the tribes of the West. Whether it was created by the Great Spirit or filled up by the sons of men, whether it was done in the morning of the world, ask not me, for I cannot tell you. No, it is called by all the tribes of the land the Hill of Little People, or the Mountain of Little Spirits. No gifts can induce an Indian to visit it, for why should he incur the anger of the little people who dwell in it, and, sacrificed upon the fire of their wrath, behold his wife and children no more? In all the marches and countermarches of the Indians, in all their goings and returnings, in all their wanderings by day or by night, to and from lands which lie beyond it, their paths are so ordered that none approaches near enough to disturb the tiny inhabitants of the hill. The memory of the red man of the forest has preserved but one instance when their privacy was violated, since it was known through the tribes that they wished for no intercourse with mortals. Before that time, many Indians were missing each year. No one knew what became of them, but they were gone and left no trace nor story behind. Valiant warriors filled their quivers with arrows, put new strings to their bows, new shod their moccasins, and sallied out to acquire glory in combat. But there was no wailing in the camp of our foes. Their arrows were not felt, their shouts were not heard. Yet they fell not by the hands of our foes, but perished we know not how. Many seasons ago there lived within the limits of the great council fire of the Mahas a chief who was renowned for his valor and victories in the field, his wisdom in the council, his dexterity and success in the chase. His name was Maturi, or the White Crane. He was celebrated throughout the vast regions of the West, from the Mississippi to the hills of the Serpent, from the Missouri to the plains of Bitter Frost, for all those qualities which render an Indian warrior famous and feared. In one of the war expeditions of the Pawnee Mahas against the Burntwood Tetons, it was the good fortune of the former to overcome and to make many prisoners, men, women, and children. One of the captives,
Sakeaja, or the bird girl, a beautiful creature in the morning of life, after being adopted into one of the Mahas families, became the wife of the chief warrior of the nation. Great was the love which the white crane had for his wife, and it grew yet stronger when she had brought him 4 sons and a daughter, Tatoka, or the antelope. She was beautiful, her skin was fair, her eyes were large and bright as those of the bison ox, and her hair, black and braided with beads, brushed, as she walked, the dew from the flowers upon the prairies. Her temper was gentle, and her voice sweet. It may not be doubted that the beautiful Tatoka had many lovers, but the heart of the maiden was touched by none of the noble youths who sought her. She bade them all depart as they came. She rejected them all. With the perverseness which is often seen among women, she had placed her affections upon a youth who had distinguished himself by no valiant deeds in war, nor by industry, nor dexterity in the chase. His name had never reached the surrounding nations. His own nation knew him not, unless as a weak and imbecile man. He was poor in everything which constitutes the riches of Indian life. Who had heard the twanging of Karkapaha's bow in the retreat of the bear, or who had beheld the war paint on his cheek or brow? Where were the scalps or the prisoners that betokened his valor or daring? No song of valiant exploits had been heard from his lips, for he had none to boast of. If he had done aught becoming a man, he had done it when none was by. The beautiful Tatoka, who knew and lamented the deficiencies of her lover, strove long to conquer her passion without success. At length, since her father would not agree to her union with her lover, the two agreed to fly together. The night fixed came, and they left the village of the Mahas and the lodge of Maturi for the wilderness. Their flight was not unmarked, and when the father was made acquainted with the disgrace which had befallen him, he called his young men around him and bade them pursue the fugitives, promising his daughter to whomsoever should slay the Karkapaha. Immediately pursuit was made, and soon 100 eager youths were on the track of the hapless pair. With that unerring skill and sagacity in discovering footprints which marked their race, their steps were tracked, and themselves soon discovered flying. What was the surprise of the pursuers when they found that the path taken by the hapless pair would carry them to the mountain of Little Spirits, and that they were sufficiently in advance to reach it before they could be overtaken. None of them durst venture within the supposed limits, and they halted till the white crane should be informed of his daughter and her lover having placed themselves under the protection of the spirits. In the meantime, the lovers pursued their journey towards the fearful residence of the little people. Despair lent them courage to perform an act to which the stoutest Indian resolution had hitherto been unequal. They determined to tell their tale to the spirits and ask their protection. They were within a few feet of the hill when, on a sudden, its brow, on which no object had till now been visible, became covered with little people, the tallest of whom was not higher than the knee of the maiden, while many of them, but these were children, were of lower stature than the squirrel. Their voice was sharp and quick, like the barking of the prairie dog. A little wing came out at each shoulder. Each had a single eye, which eye was to the right in the men and to the left in the women, and their feet stood out at each side. They were armed like Indians, with tomahawks, spears, and bows and arrows. He who appeared to be the head chief, for he wore an air of command and had the eagle feather, came up to the fugitives and said, "Why have you invaded the village of our race, whose wrath has been so fatal to your people? How dare you venture within the limits of our residence? Know you not that your lives are forfeited?" Tatoka, for her lover had less than the heart of a doe and was speechless, related their story. She told them how they had loved, how wroth her father had been, how they had stolen away and been pursued, and concluded her tale of sorrow with a flood of tears. The little man who wore the eagle feather appeared moved by what she said, and calling around him a large number of men, who were doubtless the chiefs and counselors of the nation, a long consultation took place. The result was a determination to favor and protect the lovers. At this moment, Shongo Tongo, or the Big Horse, one of the braves whom Maturi had dispatched in quest of his daughter, appeared in view in pursuit of the fugitives. It was not till Matari had taxed his courage that Big Horse had ventured on the perilous quest. He approached with the strength of heart and singleness of purpose which accompany an Indian warrior who deems the eyes of his nation upon him. When first the brave was discovered thus wantonly, and with no other purpose but the shedding of blood, intruding on the dominions of the spirits, no words can tell the rage which appeared to possess their bosoms. Secure in the knowledge of their power to repel the attacks of every living thing, the intrepid Maha was permitted to advance within a few steps of Karkapaha. He had just raised his spear to strike the unmanly lover, when, all at once, he found himself riveted to the ground. His feet refused to move, his hands hung powerless at his side, his tongue refused to utter a word. The bow and arrow fell from his hand, and his spear lay powerless. A little child, not so high as the fourth leaf of the thistle, came and spat on him, and a company of the spirits danced around him, singing a taunting song. When they had thus finished their task of preparatory torture, 1,000 little spirits drew their bows, and 1,000 arrows pierced his heart. In a moment innumerable mattocks were employed in preparing him a grave, and he was hidden from the eyes of the living, ere Totoka could have thrice counted over the fingers of her hand. When this was done, the chief of the little spirits called Karkapaha before him and said, "Maha, you have the heart of a doe. You would fly from a roused wren. We have not spared you because you deserve to be spared, but because the maiden loves you. It is for this purpose that we will give you the heart of a man, that you may return to the village of the Mahas and find favor in the eyes of Matari and the braves of the nation. We will take away your cowardly spirit and will give you the spirit of the warrior whom we slew, whose heart was firm as a rock. Sleep, man of little soul, and wake to be better worthy the love of the beautiful antelope." Then a deep sleep came over the Maha lover. How long he slept he knew not, but when he woke he felt at once that a change had taken place in his feelings and temper. The first thought that came to his mind was of a bow and arrow. The second was of the beautiful maiden who lay sleeping at his side. The little spirits had disappeared. Not a solitary being of the many thousands who, but a few minutes before, had filled the air with their discordant cries, was now to be seen or heard. At the feet of Karkapaha lay a tremendous bow, larger than any warrior ever yet used, a sheaf of arrows of proportionate size, and a spear of a weight which no Maha could wield. Karkapaha drew the bow as an Indian boy bends a willow twig, and the spear seemed in his hand but a reed or a feather. The shrill war-whoop burst unconsciously from his lips, and his nostrils seemed dilated with the fire and impatience of a newly awakened courage. The heart of the fond Indian girl dissolved in tears when she saw these proofs of strength and these evidences of spirit, which she knew, if they were coupled with valor, and how could she doubt the completeness of the gift to effect the purposes of the giver, would thaw the iced feelings of her father and tune his heart to the song of forgiveness. Yet it was not without many fears, tears, and misgivings on the part of the maiden that they began their journey to the Maha's village. The lover, now a stranger to fear, used his endeavors to quiet the beautiful Totoka, and in some measure succeeded. Upon finding that his daughter and her lover had gone to the Hill of the Spirits, and that Chongo Tongo did not return from his perilous adventure, the chief of the Mahas had recalled his braves from the pursuit, and was listening to the history of the pair, as far as the returned warriors were acquainted with it, when his daughter and her lover made their appearance. With a bold and fearless step, the once faint-hearted Karkapaha walked up to the offended father, and folding his arms upon his breast, stood erect as a pine, and motionless as that tree when the winds of the earth are chained. It was the first time that Karkapaha had ever looked on angry men without trembling, and a demeanor so unusual in him excited universal surprise. "Karkapaha is a thief," said the white crane. "It is the father of Totoka that says it," answered the lover. "Else would Karkapaha say it was the song of a bird that has flown over." "My warriors say it." "Your warriors are singing birds. They are wrens. Karkapaha says they do not speak the truth. Karkapaha has a brave heart and the strength of a bear. Let the braves try him. He has thrown away the woman's heart and become a man. Karkapaha is changed, said the chief thoughtfully. But how and when? The little spirits of the mountain have given him a new soul. Bid your braves draw this bow. Bid them poise this spear. Their eyes say they can do neither. Then is Karkapaha the strong man of his tribe? As he said this, he flourished the ponderous spear over his head as a man would poise a reed, and drew the bow as a child would bend a twig. Karkapaha is the husband of Tatoka, said Maturi, springing to his feet, and he gave the maiden to her lover. The traditionary lore of the Mahas is full of the exploits, both in war and in the chase, of Karkapaha, who was made a man by the spirits of the mountain. End of section 9.
Section 10 of Folklore and Legends, North American Indian. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Val Roth. Folklore and Legends, North American Indian. The Wonderful Rod. The Choctaws had for many years found a home in the regions beyond the mountains of snow, far away to the west of the Mississippi. They, however, decided for some reason or other to leave the place in which they dwelt, and the question then arose in what direction they should journey. Now there was a Josakeed, priest, who had a wonderful rod, and he said that he would lead them. For many years, therefore, they traveled, being guided by him. He walked before them, bearing the rod, and when night was come, he put it upright in the earth, and the people encamped round it. In the morning they looked to see what direction the rod pointed, for each night the rod left its upright position and inclined one way or another. Day after day the rod was found pointing to the east, and thither the Choctaws accordingly bent their steps. "You must travel," said the Josakeed, "as long as the rod directs you pointing to the direction in which you must go, but when the rod ceases to point and stands upright, then you must live there." So the people went on until they came to a hill where they camped, having first put up the rod so that it did not lean at all. In the morning, when they went to see which direction the rod pointed out for them to take, they found it upright, and from it grew branches bearing green leaves. Then they said, "We will stop here." So that became the center of the land of the Choctaws. End of section 10.